Alpine Liquid Fertilizers is your full-season crop fertility specialist from start to finish. Visit alpinepfl.com for more.
I'm Shaun Haney, and this is RealAg on the Weekend. Let's get real and get connected with the week that was in Canadian agriculture. RealAg on the Weekend starts now. Welcome, everybody, to RealAg on the Weekend here on 650 CQM and 980 CGME. I'm your host, Shaun Haney of RealAgriculture.com. Well, the week that was. What a week. Can you believe it? What a week. We're going to talk about the Prime Minister deciding to announce his coming resignation, the leadership race for the Liberals. What does that mean? And of course, Canada will be going to an election sometime here in the spring. We'll talk about that a little bit, amongst some other things as well. We've got a big farm show in the province of Saskatchewan next week. Crop production show will be happening in Saskatoon. I myself will be on location and there. I got a whole bunch of different events. We'll talk about that a little bit. We've got some audio from Machinery Pete, who is speaking out in Ontario this week, one of the foremost experts when it comes to what's happening in the used machinery market across Canada and the U.S. So we'll hear what he has to say. We also have a product spotlight with Terry Drabiuk from Genesis Fertilizers. Will be here as well. They're having a big event on Wednesday night that I'm going to be emceeing, so looking forward to that. Now, if you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. You can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms, or you can always call the RealAg feedback line. Now, that number is 855-776-6147. Next week, it is crop production show in Saskatoon, and I know some of the other personalities from RealAg will be there. Evan Bray, I know, is going to be on location a couple days next week. I think I'm going to be on his show on Wednesday morning. Looking forward to that. We're going to talk about some of the Trump trade tariff issues and things like that, and some of the impacts potentially on agriculture. So I'm looking forward. Always love being on Evan's show. He does a great job, and great guy as well. Also next week, so I kind of went through this last week, but this is just the excitement and all the different things that are happening around the city. You know, you have crop production show that is down at Prairie Land Park, but then you get a whole bunch of other events that are happening, like meetings at different other locations around the city. And, you know, if you're not working in agriculture, you're just you listen to RealAg all the time and you hear this show on the weekends, we appreciate you and your interest in agriculture. But here's the reality. And you know what? Maybe if you're in the restaurant industry or hotels, any sort of hospitality, you know this, the economic benefit that is to Saskatchewan and Saskatoon with an event like crop production show when it comes to town. And having the benefit of a location that can host major trade shows, what a boom to any city. You know, a lot of times when you get into city planning and there's talk about, why do we, come on, I would never go down there to a conference or, a trade show. Is this something the city needs to be spending money on? And then you get into the calculations of the economic benefit that is brought to a city and the trickle-down effect of the amount of farmers that are coming to town next week that are going to be doing things like, buying fuel, stopping at gas stations. There's the store to pick up some supplies from the beer store. There's, of course, restaurants at night that would be packed. And one of the things I love about Saskatoon is the restaurant scene, to be honest with you. I've always said to people that Saskatoon has a great restaurant scene. Sometimes some of the locals sort of look at me with a bit of a sideways look, like, really? But I really believe that. I think it's got a great independent restaurant scene downtown. So it's going to be a great week, and hopefully the weather cooperates and it's not one of those very, very frigid weeks. Did you see some of the weather in the U.S. South, like in Missouri, snow in Atlanta, crazy amount of snow? Just go online and look at some of those pictures. They are something. So next week, on top of being down at Prairie Land Park, I'm also going to be doing an event with FMC. Looking forward to that on Tuesday morning. I've got there's the crop sphere group. All the crop commissions are getting together. I'm doing a panel with some of the crop groups. I'm looking forward to that on Tuesday afternoon. Got a great panel of guests, including Deputy Minister of Agriculture Bill Grewal. We got Steve Webb. It's going to be a part of it. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then on Wednesday with Saskatchewan seed growers, I'm giving a keynote in the morning. I'm doing a panel on the art of selling of seed as well at that event that I'm looking forward to. Wednesday night, I mentioned I'm doing the Genesis Fertilizers event. And then Thursday morning, we're going to have it'd be really kind of cool. There's a young farmer seminar and giving a keynote about some of the characteristics of the under 35 farmer from some of the market research that we've been doing at RealAg Studies and RealAgriculture. And then we've also got a panel there as well. And then, coming home Thursday. So it is a jam-packed, busy week. Also joining me from RealAgriculture will be Amber Bell. So she'll be with me as well. She's going to be walking the trade show floor, gathering a bunch of interviews. What's the latest and greatest when it comes to agricultural product services and technology. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to next week. So if you do see me anywhere at any of those meetings or on the grounds, and you're a fan of RealAgriculture.com, maybe it's the RealAg Radio podcast, or you frequently listen to this show, make sure you say hello and you introduce yourself. And always love talking and getting a chance to discuss interest in what's going on in your farm. What are some of your thoughts and things that you're experiencing, and get some of your feedback as well. Good to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what has happened this week in Ottawa, and how does all of this this chaos that we've seen this week, what is it? How does it tie into what we're hearing from incoming President Trump about Canada being the 51st state and essentially annexing us, and why him from his vantage point, why it's a no-brainer, and what's Canada's reaction been? We'll get to all that when we come back. You're listening to RealAg on the Weekend here on 650 CQM and 980 CGM. If you're serious about agriculture, RealAg's got you covered.
For over 10 years, we've listened to and shared what producers have to say about everything from policy to agronomy from coast to coast.
Keep up with the latest in Canadian agriculture at RealAgriculture.com through daily newsletters, and check out our YouTube channel.
Thanks for joining us in the RealAg community as we continue to cover and serve North American agriculture.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
Since 2010, the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com has been helping farmers to grow great wheat. Covering everything from markets, the latest research, pest and disease control, all the way down to on-farm trials, the Wheat School has everything your crop needs. Check out our massive video library on YouTube and grow great wheat with the Wheat School, brought to you by Syngenta Canada, C&M Seeds, and Alberta Grains.
An exciting new event is coming to Saskatchewan mid-January. The Sask Crops Forum will include Commission annual general meetings, 4 keynote sessions, plus extensive networking opportunities. Registration is now open. Visit Sask Canola to learn more.
It's been one of those weeks where, it's no surprise that Prime Minister Trudeau made the announcement they did on Monday. In fact, it's been a long time coming. And that's not just coming from the conservative side of the aisle, that kind of criticism. It's coming from people within his own party, his own caucus, his own cabinet. And it's amazing how he handled the Chrystia Freeland situation. Really was that final, all of this hasn't happened because of that, but it was sort of like the last chess move, sort of the unforced error. I'd be very curious as to how he looks back at that whole decision and asking her to step down as finance minister on the Friday before the Monday fall economic statement and dropping the fact that, he was going to put Mark Carney in that seat. And then Carney's not even in, hasn't after all this, hasn't necessarily backfilled that position. Dominic LeBlanc is now the finance minister along with some of the other portfolios. What a mess. What a mess. Anyway, so steps down on Monday, and now we've got Parliament prorogued. A lot of criticism of that till March 24th. We're going to have a leadership race for the Liberals in the meantime. Then people are speculating or calculating 2 weeks of a new government. We're going to have a non-confidence motion. If you listen to the Friday RealAg Radio podcast, we talk about proroguing Parliament and what that what the timeline all kind of looks like here, and what some of the scenarios are for the non-confidence vote, and basically puts the election in May. Now, had they just called an election, this would all been sped up. This was avoidable. Some saying, hey, the Prime Minister should have got the message in the fall. Some people saying, hey, you know what? This is something he should have done last June, July. They've lost some pretty big by-elections in very traditional Liberal strongholds. Who is shocked that we're here? Maybe what's a little bit surprising is how far, the party that Prime Minister Trudeau inherited is kind of how it's being left. It's just strange how so many times things go full circle. It's sort of like, I was thinking about Bill Belichick, the greatest football coach in the history of the NFL, one could argue. The Patriots that he went to, they were pretty down and out. Kind of like the Patriots that maybe he left. I mean, he probably left them in worse shape, to be honest with you, because there was Bill Parcells before Belichick and things like that. But yeah, just not a great situation. And all this happening, leaving Canada very, very rudderless at a time where, quite frankly, we need some leadership, some strong leadership. We've got a situation where incoming President Trump is talking, serious or not, talking about, annexation of Canada, and, there'd be this big, beautiful country all together, Greenland and the Panama Canal, and amazing times. But Canada, no matter what happens here, and the tariffs that could be potentially applied, Canada needs a reaction. They need leadership, and we need strength. And at this point, we just look like a rudderless ship in the abyss of the ocean, which is really kind of sad. And it's I think Canadians should be a little bit more upset about where we are left here at this point, at least in the short term. I know I am. I'm very concerned about it. So so I don't know. I'm trying to figure where I'm going to go here, but I think what we'll do next is we'll hear Prime Minister Trudeau on Jake Tapper talking about his reaction to the 51st state suggestion.
President-elect Trump has been needling you a bit, calling you Governor Trudeau, talking about making Canada the 51st state. Did you have any interaction with him today?
No, not today. But that's not going to happen. Canadians are incredibly proud of being Canadian. One of the ways we define ourselves most easily is, we're not American. There is such a depth of pride that's not actually an issue. What I think is happening in this is President Trump, who's a very skillful negotiator, is getting people to be somewhat distracted by that conversation, to take away from the conversation around 25% tariffs on oil and gas and electricity and steel and aluminum and lumber and concrete, and everything the American consumers buy from Canada is suddenly going to get a lot more expensive if he moves forward on these tariffs. And that's something that I think we need to be focusing on a little bit more.
In a different interview, I think it was a press conference, President Trump, incoming President Trump, talked about, kind of in response, and I don't know which one happened first, but this audio is kind of in response to that. I'm not sure the incoming administration in the U.S. feels that they need Canadian stuff like Canadians think they need our stuff. Here's what Trump had to say.
We're spending hundreds of billions a year to take care of Canada. We lose in trade deficits. We're losing massive. We don't need their cars. You know, they make 20% of our cars. We don't need that. I'd rather make them in Detroit. We don't need the cars. We don't need their lumber. We have massive fields of lumber. We don't need their lumber. We have to unrestrict them because stupid people put, restrictions on, but I can do that with an executive order. We don't need anything they have. We don't need their dairy products. We have more than they have. We don't need anything. So why are we losing $200 billion a year and more to protect Canada?
Yeah, don't get lost in that. They're not losing. They're not subsidizing. They're not taking care of us. In fact, we're buying more U.S. agricultural goods in Canada from the U.S. than we ever have, and they're the same vice versa. Okay, now our exports to the U.S. are increasing at a higher rate than vice versa, but they have shown that they have needed Canadian products. Here's what I want you to pay attention to, is there is a difference in the products and the type of product. And when it comes to Saskatchewan potash, for example, they need that product. Well, unless they're going to totally cut out Canada and buy all Russian potash, which I guess. But I wouldn't expect that potash to receive much of a focus. Interesting, he chose lumber in that discussion. I also take issue with the milk comment because Canada's not exporting milk. I think what he's referring to there is Canada, trying to move skim proteins into the U.S. That may be that reference there, just a little bit mixed up. But he does mention autos, and I think he captures the attitude that I think is kind of lost on a lot of Canadians. And what's lost is how the attitude has shifted. Previously, when it came to autos, and I don't know, let's just assume Trump's right, that it is a 20% number on autos going from Canada to the U.S., just 20% of the U.S. supply. They don't want that going forward. The question, before it was, this is nice. The integration of the economies, trading back and forth. And the main question now in D.C. is, why are those auto plants in Windsor? Why are they in Oshawa? Why are they not in Detroit, as he just basically said? Don't care that they're coming from Canada. Well, they care, but they want it stopped. No more nearshoring. We want inshoring. And so this is the battle that Canadian trade negotiators have. It's also going to be a battle on other products. Beef is an example where we have talked about the high integration of the beef value chain between all three countries, for that matter. And again, it's what we're arguing as the benefit, as if it's leverage for us, is adding to the argument of what they are trying to prevent. As I've been telling you here on RealAg on the weekend, as I've been telling audiences in my speeches, I was in Washington State earlier this week in Kennewick speaking to 400 wheat growers. The attitude in Washington, D.C. and into the countryside has changed. How they view trade is different than it was just a few short years ago. And as we hear lots about the Team Canada approach, as we hear lots about, the benefits of trade, the reaction that Canadians that are going to D.C. or at that state level are going to get a different reaction than they previously got. And they may get the same reaction in private, but publicly, it is not as politically possible for people to look and be viewed as if they're supporting Canada more than they are the United States. This is a big hurdle for Canadian trade negotiators and Canadian parliamentarians at the provincial level. Premier Scott Moe, when he is having discussions about the benefits of trade, the conversation, the tone is going to be different. And I've got a column published at RealAgriculture.com looking at how the timing of a change in leadership in Canada, the potential of Prime Minister Pierre Poilievre is needed to provide an increased shot in the arm of Canadiana. Because the challenge in front of us is a different challenge than we previously had, which requires different tactics and different leadership. And that's what Canadians, I think, are going to be expecting. So if you have any feedback, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to hear from Genesis Fertilizer right after this. RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hepner and Lindsay Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
The following is a paid-for product spotlight by Genesis Fertilizers. Time to get caught up with what's going on over there at Genesis Fertilizers. Joining us right now is Terry Drabiuk. Terry, how's it going?
Great, Shaun, great.
I know that a lot of farmers are really excited about this project. Of course, you are as well. So talk about what's going on here in terms of the proposed low-carbon fertilizer facility and how does the upcoming We Can Build It event during the crop production show, it's a week away. Talk about that event and how all this connects together.
Sure. So the We Can Build It event is taking place in Saskatoon at the Hilton Garden Inn during the crop production show on the 15th of January. And it starts at 5 and there's drinks and meals. And we have quite a few players that are going to be in the city. So we've got our EPC, our engineering procurement construction firm, DL, E&C, PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC will be in attendance. And, you know, Shaun, when we talk about appointing PwC as our financial advisor or even DL as our EPC, it's really them selecting us. So it took 6 months to have both of them, PwC and DL, basically look at our project. They both those companies are very well known globally. They have reputational risk, and they selected our project because they feel that it's a good project to get their company's name behind. And I think that's why the We Build It name is suitable for that event.
Yeah, you know, for the farmers that we talk to here on the show, there's a lot of concern right now about the stickiness of fertilizer prices and some of the volatility that's out there in the market. And this is a pathway, an opportunity to have a farmer-owned solution, or at least a part of the game, so to speak. So, what are some of the things that farmers can expect to get out of this We Can Build It event?
They're going to hear from these companies I just mentioned about. Those companies are going to talk about how the plant is going to be built. We're currently in the throes of doing our front-end engineering and design. That acronym is FEED. So we're in the throes of that. So we'll have DL, our own engineers, all sitting at the table talking about how this plant's going to be built. And it's important, Shaun, for listeners to understand that we're building one plant, and we're building one plant for farmers. And what those two attributes bring is a security of their fertilizer. So whatever happens around the world or even back home, they'll have a secure fertilizer for their farm, and the profit stays here in Canada.
Yeah, and farmers having skin in the game. Farmers play a big role here in shaping the future of fertilizer production in Western Canada with this build taking place.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're critical. Farmers are critical to this project. We call it a closed loop system, and what that means is that the people who own the plant are also the people who will take product from the plant, and that's so critical in many ways, in terms of bankability, in terms of security of their supply. It's a really good model.
Now, you've a bunch of milestones recently that have been pretty exciting. You've got the PDP and license agreements, as we've been chatting about. Are there going to be some other key announcements made at the event at Crop Production Show? And I guess give us a little bit of the why should farmers attend an event like this, whether they're invested or not invested yet?
Yeah, I think it's really important for all farmers to attend that can. It shows lots of support for both our financial advisor and DLEC, who are coming all the way from Korea. We're also backing that up with meetings with ministers that week and meetings with the crowns. Because we're in the feed, we have to sit down with the utilities like SaskPower, SaskWater, Transgas, Sask Energy, and Department of Highways, because those are critically important to building this plant. So that anybody who attends is going to get firsthand knowledge on the timeline, how this plant's going to be built. Is there going to be more announcements? Possibly, Shaun. There's a lot of touch points that are going on in the background. We've got a relatively thin team, and whether it be technology providers or banks or strategic investors, or even a phosphate import, urea export play could be involved. So yes, there could be announcements at the event.
Hey, if somebody wants more information on attending an event, I'm going to be there in person. I'm moderating a panel. Looking forward to that. So I'm going to be there. I'm sure there are other members here of the Real Agriculture community that are interested in attending to the show, the Crop Production Show, and the We Can Build It event. So how do they find out about it? How do they attend?
Well, I'm sure there's going to be lots of communications coming out on our behalf, but it's the simplest way, Shaun, is just to go to our website. It's genesisfertilizers.com. There will be a link to the event where you can register, and I encourage people to register early, so we have numbers for food and drinks and that type of stuff. And on there is all our profiles, so you could go into who we are, and you can directly contact me via email or phone, or anybody that actually sits on the board of directors. And I do look forward to seeing you again at the show, and I look forward to a great event.
We've been talking to Terry Drabiuk. He is with Genesis Fertilizers. Terry, thanks a lot for joining us here today on Real Ag Radio for this product spotlight. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Shaun.
We'll hope to see all of you at the Crop Production Show and the We Can Build It event with Genesis Fertilizer. And make sure you go to genesisfertilizers.com, as Terry mentioned, for more information. We'll be right back on Real Ag on the Weekend right after this.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomists, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomists with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by BASF and Syngenta Canada.
This week at the Ontario Ag Conference in Ridgetown, Ontario, one of the leading experts when it comes to farm machinery prices, Machinery Pete, was one of the speakers, and Real Agriculture's Bern Tobin had a chance to catch up with Machinery Pete and talk about what's going on in the market. You can hear the full interview by going to realagriculture.com, but here's a part of it.
Yeah, that period of mid-13 through end of 15, that was the biggest drop in late model used farm equipment values I've ever seen. Nothing close. And again, starting in 1989, I saw drops, after, commodity prices were up in 96, used values went up and then they crashed. But that period, basically when ethanol really took off like a rocket ship, late 07, from there through early 13 was a very strong period for new sales, and used values were at an all-time high. And then what was building up, you could see what was happening was dealers were getting a big excess of large late model units like 24-row planters, sprayers, combines, high horse tractors, and they knew the pain was coming. And then when commodity prices fell, like April of 13, it started to adjust. And so that to me has been if history is a lesson, that's the data point I'm looking back at to compare to now, which I think we're about 1 year into this current recalibration. And again, in 13 through 15, late model used fell about 18 to 25% year over year for like two plus years, and then began to just flatten out. So, I've been a little surprised this time around. A couple things. One, just the volume of very late model equipment.
There's a lot of stuff out there, right?
Dealers have been super aggressive in 23 and 24 taking this stuff out to auction. And, the prices they get, they're having some huge losses. But as the interest rates started to go up last year in the U.S., paying 8% interest on your used lot full of, that's painful too. Yeah. So I think that one of the structural changes, Bern, that I've seen versus a decade ago is just with the dealers. Back then, there were way more dealers. Like if you had 5 stores, you were a decent-sized dealership. Now there's hardly any 5 stores left. They've all been gobbled up. Now you're a 30 to 80 store dealership. And these dealerships are capitalized differently. So they're able, it's no fun for them, but they're better able to withstand these losses. So that's the one big difference versus a decade ago, is year one into this downturn, we're seeing about 150% increase in the late model stuff being sold at auction. So that's the one point for farmers. In your history, your memory, and your dad and your grandpa might tell you, okay, we can sit tight with our equipment through this down period, and just know there's always going to be this huge excess on the dealer lot. That might not be like that. It's still recalibrating. I think 25 we're going to continue to adjust. But it's been really fun to track.
And you talked about the difference between that period and what's happening now, and a couple of other things. Online auctions have changed this game completely.
Yeah, unbelievable, Bern. I think if I were to write kind of a book or whatever about my 35-year experience, the period in middle of March of 2020 was going to be one of the first chapters, because it was unbelievable. So when the shutdown came, it was right in smack in the busiest auction season of the year, March and April. And most auction owners, I'm 59, they're like a little bit older than me throughout most of North America. So technology-wise, we'd had online bidding for 15 years, so there was that. But now all of a sudden, boom, you can't have a physical in-person auction. It has to be online. And the whole industry leaned into online only. And the fascinating thing for me was that commodity prices hadn't gone up yet. That was like October of 20. But instantly, within a week of the shutdown, auction pricing went up. And to the point, I actually wrote a blog and I said, folks, this is unbelievable. There's not necessarily any reason for it, but I think what happened is that pandemic just forced us over the shark tank. Right. And so now, when you see a piece of used equipment in Tennessee that fits what you're looking for,
Now that barrier has just been eviscerated, and it's like you click the button and it's yours. And once that changed, in theory, it speeds up the whole used equipment, farm equipment space. You know, if you look at the automobile sector, I always found an interesting contrast. So the automobile sector has been 10, 15 years ahead of the used farm equipment. So if they get something aged out on the lot, they just take it to auction, boom, they move it, take their losses, move it, focus on selling new. Farm equipment was different. And now the whole system is faster. And so that's a good thing if you're a manufacturer. It's a good thing if you're a shareholder. It's a bit problematic if you're a farmer relying on the old peaks and valleys. You might have to speed that up a little bit, I think.
You also said the prices of new have really shaken this thing up as well.
Yeah, that's probably the number one thing. Is I always figured, 35 years doing this, it's like, can they go higher? Can they go higher? And of course, they always did. I always used to assume like a 4% annual jump. And of course, coming out of the pandemic with the labor costs, just the raw, you couldn't get the steel, the supply issues, everything got gummed up. Whether right or not or whatever, manufacturer farm equipment, the cost just skyrocketed. And once you get that high, the number one thing you don't want to do is back up. So now, in terms of just slamming off production, so you're closing plants, you're sending plants south of the border or whatever, all of that is done to hold that new price point. And the question becomes, we would always ask this, can you get a point where it's too high for a price of a tractor, a combine, or a planter? I don't know that we've hit it, but I think we're starting to test it.
Hey, you spent some of your presentation talking about the auctions that you've been visiting in the last few months. A couple of thoughts on some things that you talked about. The price of loader tractors, for example.
Yeah, loader tractors, of course. That livestock sector has been much more healthy, vibrant than the grain side the past year plus. So on the auction side, we definitely see much stronger auction pricing on good used loader tractors. So whether they're on the smaller end of the scale or a little bit higher, just much stronger. So versus a higher horse tractor just for the grain side is dropping more quickly.
You're always amazed with grain carts.
Oh, grain carts! It was amazing. I was at an auction December 3rd, burn. It was in Dexter, Minnesota, a nice little farm community about 40 miles outside of Rochester, where I live. And it was a retirement sale, and everything sold really well. The tractor sold well, super clean operation, but the grain cart kind of stopped me in its tracks. It was a 22 model Brent 2596 on tracks, and it brought $170,000 US. And of course, all our auction prices, they're all free to view at machinerypete.com. We want people to look at this stuff before they buy or sell. But that's the highest by I think it was like $15,000, the highest auction price ever in a grain cart. And it did make me stop and say, let's just go back in time. Because again, the price has been rising so fast. So the highest auction price ever on a grain cart 20 years ago in 04 was $36,000. And 10 years ago in 2014, it was $72,000. Now, of course, they've continued to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But, whether you can chalk it up to inflation, chalk it up to whatever you want. All I know is we went from 36K to 170K. And again, what drives that is the price of new.
Yeah. You talked about, again, good used equipment is going to hold its value. And you talked about the limbo bar.
Yeah, the Machinery Pete limbo bar. It's something I started writing about years ago. And it's basically, so the used equipment sector, no matter how good or bad things are, there's always a financial point, a line in the sand, a limbo bar, at which everything in good shape will still sell well. So even during bad periods like the late 90s, like 04 to 06, 13, 14, 15, and what's changed is the level of the limbo bar. So when I first started writing about it, it was about $10,000, $15,000. Anything under that back in the late 90s would still sell well. And now the limbo bar might be anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000. But I shared a slide of a sale in Illinois I covered, and it had a Bush Hog 1865E side boom mower. And we stood there and filmed it selling it for about $20,000, and the owner told me, Pete, I paid like $17,000 for that like a few years ago. But you could feel the interest in it. At the same time, when late model used is going like this, here's a $20,000 mower, and the competition for it is through the roof. So that's my limbo bar.
That was Bern Tobin of Real Agriculture talking to Machinery Pete at the Ontario Ag Conference. Highly encourage you to hear that entire interview and watch the video by going to realagriculture.com or, of course, checking out our Real Agriculture YouTube channel. We covered a lot of ground here today. Would love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. And like I said, make sure if you are at Crop Production Show around the city of Saskatoon next week and you see me, please say hello. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, getting real, and getting connected with Real Agriculture. We'll chat again next week. Cheers, everybody.